the storms of life are raging, Lord, stand by me. When the current pulls me under, Lord, stand by me. When the rising waters toss me like a ship upon the sea, you who rule the wind and water, Lord, stand by me. In the midst of persecution, Lord, stand by me. When the enemies surround me, Lord, stand by me. When the tyrant wields his terror and the armies wage their might, when the darkness overwhelms me, Lord, stand by me. Stand by me, stand by me, lift me up from the restless sea. When I am lost, when love can't be found, when no one cares, Lord, stand by me. Stand by me, stand by me, lift me up from the restless sea. When I am lost, when love can't be found, when no one cares, Lord, stand by me. 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 Lift me up from the restless sea. When I am lost, when love can't be found, when no one cares, Lord, stand by me.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Catholics at Home. I can't believe it, it's already episode 96 today. I'm Jonathan, or JP, and I am actually your host for this morning's program. Welcome, everyone, to our show this weekend. If it's your first time visiting, I invite you to like, subscribe, or even better, host a viewing party with your friends and family. So, episode 96, with a blink of an eye, soon we'll be inching our way towards episode 100. Feel free to let us know in the comments section what topics you would like us to do for our 100th episode. Why not be creative, think big, and we'll try our best to do whatever we can. And that was actually the song Stand By Me by our friends of Catholics at Home. It's such a beautiful rendition. And speaking of Stand By Me, today's topic, we're going to be touching a little bit about social work. And we have got two very special guests that will be joining us later today onto the show. And they're going to be talking about social work, what it means to be a social worker. But before doing all of this, I would like to invite none other than Father Clarence Devadas, our resident padre.
Hi, morning, JP.
Morning, Father. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And good morning, everyone, to all our viewers. Welcome to, you said episode 96. Wow.
Oof. I know. That time flies, right? I mean, just thinking about how we started this podcast, or how you started this podcast in 2020, and with a blink of an eye, 2 years down the road, here we are, episode 96 already.
So, 1st April will mark 2 years, the second anniversary of Catholics at Home. Yeah, yes. And I really, as you said, I want to ask our viewers out there, send us some comments. How has it been for you in the last 2 years with us? And perhaps suggest to us also how can we celebrate the 100th, not anniversary, but the episode. Let us know how we can do. JP, I must ask you. You seem to be in a different location today. You got a different background. Is it you've turned your table around, or you moved somewhere? You move houses or something like that?
I wish so, Father, but I'm actually in the back of me is actually the large background of where I'm actually currently at, which is Methodist College. I'm actually occupying one of the empty classes and doing this program. So I guess I'm kind of like the resident person who's going to be doing podcasts at different parts of Malaysia, right? One day I'm here, one day I'm in Pavilion, one day I'm in Genting. For 100th episode, maybe, who knows, I'll be somewhere else.
Maybe we send you to Rome, bro.
Oh, that would be good. That would be very, very fun.
Now that we are opening our borders on the 1st of April with a bit of caution too. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So, Father, I mean, today we're going to talk about, social work, social worker, and I'm just curious with our viewers out there who's tuning to this program. It's something that we rarely think about, the profession of being a social worker. What's the first time you've actually heard of this social worker, Father, in your experience as a priest?
I think more the experience has been in the seminary, where we get different kinds of exposure. I mean, of course, social worker is a very specialized area, but all of us in church, we do some kind of what you call it, social work or relief work to help the poor, help during the disaster, in different things. We do little things, but of course, social work is a very specialized field. But yeah, I mean, for us in the seminary too, it's one aspect of our own immersion and exposure also to different areas. So in the early years, we do different kinds. We work with different kinds. I mean, for example, we work with Little Sisters of the Poor, for the Home for the Aged as part of our training. Though it's not. I mean, we are not trained as social workers in a professional sense, but we are exposed to this reality because it becomes part of the ministry that we will be embracing as we are ordained a priest. I mean, and to be aware of these things, I think that's the whole exposure part of our seminary training.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you brought that up because it's part of the curriculum, but a lot of us also growing up with Christian values. At some point in time, like you mentioned, Father, we are a social worker or doing social work one way or another.
Well, we know that you are studying in a very specialized field. You're doing a diploma in social work. Yeah, we will talk about it a bit later. From banking to social work is quite a leap of faith, a career change completely, isn't it? I mean, we'll talk about it a bit later. Maybe we bring in our guests this morning, and I'm told that they are part of your team who are preparing you. Are you nervous?
Yes, they are. Yes, I am, because it's the first time that I'm actually going to be speaking with my lecturers of my program. But I'm really excited to bring them on. So please allow me to introduce Jolyn Hong, the head of department for Diploma in Social Work program at Methodist College, Kuala Lumpur, and Elsie, past president of the Malaysian Association of Social Work, and faculty member at MCKL.
Hi.
Hi,
Morning,
good morning.
Elsie. Morning, Jolyn.
Welcome.
Morning, Father Clarence.
Yeah, glad to have you us on the show.
So first question: has JP been a good student?
Father, that's a question. Father, that's a question that I should vacate the room, and then then they can share with our audience.
Yeah, I think we'll put them in a separate room before we answer.
Anyway, welcome to our show this morning. Thank you for taking time to be with us from your busy schedule.
Yeah, glad to share.
Yep. Very happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Jolyn and Elsie. I know we've gone through this this introduction, but for the benefits of our viewers, maybe Jolyn, you would like to start off by introducing yourself and what you do, and how did you ended up, in this realm of social work?
Wow, how did I end up here? That's a long story. So a little bit about myself. Maybe I'm currently, as what JP has mentioned, I'm currently the head of diploma in social work in the MCKL. Prior to this, I was teaching a subject related to community projects, and I've always loved being involved with different communities and getting to know them and being immersed in them. So I've been involved in many projects, regardless whether it's a government project or our own private project. Other than that, I'm also a registered counsellor with the Lembaga Counsellor Malaysia. I was trained in University Malaya, and my focus is on crisis and grief counselling. So before I entered the world of academia, I was actually working with United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Hence, you can see where the interest of focusing on crisis and grief comes from, as well as, having this great admiration for the work that social workers do. So I guess that's just a little bit about myself and how I came into social work.
And how about you, Elsie? How did you end up being a social worker and into this academia as well?
Oh, it was all unplanned actually. Yeah, after finishing my SPM, actually, I was just going to work, and it so happened I landed a job in a medical social work unit at the University Hospital, under University of Malaya. And my boss at that time thought I had the aptitude for social work, so she actually persuaded me to take up the diploma in social studies at the University of Singapore. And thankfully, I did go for it, and then I started working as a medical social worker for over 20 years. And following that, I did get into private practice with a multinational company, doing this employee assistance program for employees who have personal as well as work-related problems. And from there on, I moved to even private social work services with a private counseling clinic. And on top of that, UNICEF got me in to coordinate the initiative of the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development on the drafting of the social work bill, which I think we will be discussing that also. Mm-hmm. And over the years, I've been a member of the Malaysian Association of Social Workers and facilitated a lot of training workshops. But I never expected to end up being in teaching in diploma in social work. It just so happened that the person who was supposed to do it couldn't do it, and so the next person was picked, like, okay, you do it. And but I am glad it's been now 5 years plus, and it's been a very rewarding, although stressful situation. But glad I have students like Jonathan in the program. Really happy to see somebody from the banking sector coming in.
All right, JP, so you don't worry, you're getting good marks for your next exam. Looks like it.
Yes.
I'm just going to address this to Jolyn now. I'm going to put you in a bit of a spot in front of your student.
Okay.
You are the head of the diploma program We use this word social work quite loosely sometimes, and maybe synonymously we use them interchangeably in many ways. What would be a kind of a textbook definition? What is social work in that sense? What would you tell your students on the first day of class? What is social work? Help us understand a little bit.
Okay. Well, as a lecturer, I would definitely go and I would tell JP that if you want to go by definition, especially by the definition of International Federation of Social Worker, I would tell him that a social worker. A lot of times we like to use it interchangeably with someone who is volunteering or is doing good to the community. But the fact that Father Clarence, you were saying that it's a very specialized kind of profession. So social workers are actually a practice-based profession and an academic discipline that promotes social change, development, social cohesion, and the empowerment of people. We use principles like social justice, human rights, collective responsibility, and respect for the diversity that is a part of social work. So we do actually, as social workers, when we work, we are underpinned by theories, multiple theories, from social science, from humanities. We engage people, and we try to empower them in the structures to address life challenges and enhance well-being. So that is more of a formal definition. So if I wanted to elaborate further and allow him to understand it, I would say, all of us have a part to play in the community. We can do good, as what you said and what Miss Elsie has mentioned just now. We can always just lend a shoulder, lend an ear, and these are all part of psychosocial support. However, when it comes to a role of a social worker, we think beyond that as well. The main goal here is to empower the person or the community, enabling them to survive in probably a situation that might not be very easy for them. Therefore, we work in terms of we can create policies, we can create projects, allowing the communities to survive, giving them tools, giving them the knowledge. So I would say that's the big difference, or how would I explain professional social work?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense that you give a very, very wide scope of a social worker. I mean, a lot of people seem to think that, if you talk about social worker, it's about, feeding the hungry or doing, helping children. But you use the word empowerment, and empowerment cuts across in many aspects of our lives, isn't it? I mean, every aspect of our lives is about empowerment to do different things. Yeah, thanks for that, the clarity of telling us. Sometimes you say you're a social worker, they all think that, oh, you're going around, feeding people. There's something that's the kind of conception people have in mind. But, to look at it in a more broader perspective is what it's all about. Interesting.
And I think, on this, on this topic, I think it's also interesting to perhaps get Elsie's feedback, because, she has been a practitioner for the last 20, 30 years in this field. Elsie, I think you've highlighted before that there is actually a fundamental difference, also like what Jolyn have shared about the work that we do socially, for example, a CSR project for a corporation, or if you're on a weekend and you volunteer at the soup kitchen, those are actually social work. So what are kind of misconceptions that the media or even people in general, or for that matter, our viewers have in terms of what makes a person a social worker, that you think, that perhaps you'd like to take this opportunity to also dispel, if I can use that word?
Okay. Well, I know there's a lot of concepts about social work, not only in Malaysia but everywhere else. And yeah, people tend to think that social work means that you're just doing good deeds, any kind of good deeds. So for a long time, it has been associated with things like gotong royong, with giving money, donations, charitable kind of acts, reading to the blind, all kinds of activities that are actually good activities. But when we talk about social work, we are actually basing it more on professional kinds of knowledge, professional kinds of values, and professional kinds of what we call activities that at a level of intervention that actually strengthens the individual, the family, the group, the community, and then makes them sort of much more resilient, or even capable of managing problems in their life. So it is a bit more than just volunteering your services by giving your time. It has to be actually associated or very, very strongly with professional knowledge as well, and it's quite difficult for people to understand because social work has always been in a sense referred to as just doing good work, doing voluntary work, and they don't realize that it is much more than that actually, because you have to base it on professional knowledge. You have to base it on theoretical knowledge. And in social work program, we do emphasize that very much. It's not easy, but it's necessary in order for us to be much more sort of, in a sense, proficient, capable, and much more sort of professional about it, right? So yeah, it's quite difficult for people to understand that there are theories that we refer to that have been tested over time, and it's not just a feeling of wanting to do good, although that is good. You start off with wanting to do good, but you need much more than that feeling of, goodwill, of wanting to help. You need a lot of professional knowledge. You need a lot of training, in order to also manage your own personal feelings, your own personal, maybe even bias and prejudices, to overcome that in order to work with different groups of people. Because if you start with prejudices, it actually blocks the way to helping people, because you will come in with your own stigmas, and so it's actually quite a difficult profession to get into. It's challenging. It's very challenging. It takes a lot of time, to work through your own personal prejudices, bias, and lack of knowledge and lack of practice, or even sometimes your own personal experiences in life can be a deterrent, to helping people, because you have your own bias. So social work does need a lot of professional training, really. It does.
Well,
So
Elsie,
I
here
hear
in
what
Malaysia,
you, yeah.
sorry, I was just going to ask, sorry,
Go,
JP.
go ahead, go ahead.
Here in Malaysia, to call yourself a social worker, I mean, do you have to be licensed, or do you have to have some professional qualification in Malaysia?
In Malaysia, we have not reached that stage yet. We are
Okay.
working towards it, because we do not have any act, sort of any enactment that sort of says that you are a professional social worker. But this is something that we have been working on. The Malaysian Association of Social Workers has been working on it for the past, 20, 30 years. And it is not easy, I guess, because of the people tend to just think of social work as charity work, as doing good deeds, but it's much more than that if you want to be a professional. And so there is this issue about people misunderstanding the word social work. They think that it's just something social, but it's much more. It's actually biopsychosocial. You're looking at knowledge about biology, about psychology, about social science and all that. It's quite a demanding kind of profession to be in, actually, because it does call for a lot of resilience in your own character, your own personality, to deal with tough kinds of problems, to deal with tough kinds of personalities. Right? Not an easy area to work in, actually. Very challenging, but
I wish all of this were told to me when I joined the orientation program. But all said and done, I have enjoyed this journey so far with Elsie and Jolyn and the rest of my cohort. But I just wanted to pivot a little bit, Elsie, to talk about the Malaysian Association of Social Workers, because earlier on you talked about when Father Clarence asked about whether our social workers in this case have to be qualified and all that. And I think this is where MASW comes into picture. So maybe you can share a little bit about the genesis of why there is MASW and perhaps some of the goals that they are actually trying to achieve at the moment.
Okay, yeah, the Malaysian Association of Social Workers began actually as what we call in the early years after the World War II, when the British colonial administration was in charge. And they actually started bringing in trained social workers from UK to work in hospitals, in medical settings. Yeah? And they were known then as almoners. The word came from the word almoning, yeah. And so they were all British, but then subsequently when Singapore started this social work program, then locals started getting their training from there, and I was in the last batch of that diploma in social work program. And since then it's all gone to degree programs, right? But yeah, this is where I think the history of social work in this country has evolved over the years. Initially, it was just medical social work that had emphasis, and because they were influenced by the British social workers who work in hospitals. But then we actually realized that people who work in social welfare department were also doing social work. So there was this kind of a merging of the two into one, and that's ended up with this Malaysian Association of Social Workers, whereas previously it was just medical social work. Yeah, so this is where I think medicals and the social side has come together. But over time, it's still not well recognized in this country, despite years of petitioning and lobbying for recognition. It's still at a stage where we have this thing about the social work uh, profession bill not being fully sort of accepted. It's been sort of up and down, ding dong, in and out kind of a thing. One time it's a big issue with one minister, another time it's like out of the picture kind of thing. So it's a struggle for people to recognize social work as a profession, and there's still a lot of misunderstanding, about what it entails. Many people still call themselves social workers. They do good deeds, yes, they do a lot of good jobs, good sort of giving assistance in many ways. But I think when you talk about professional social work, yeah, it has to come with some theoretical kind of learning. It has to come with, some at a more professional level. So yeah, we
You,
do
you,
have.
you have been mentioning legislation. I think that's something that is very close to your heart, I believe. And we will come to that. Already several times the word has come out, no legislation to manage this. We will talk a little bit about the social workers bill. But I don't know whether we mentioned at the beginning, JP, the reason why we are talking about social workers today is because I believe 15th March is World Social Work Day, and that's part of the reason why we are having this conversation this morning, to be able to, to celebrate the gift of social work and social workers in our community who often are not recognized, probably, who are probably overworked and underpaid, as they always say, just like myself, but don't worry. Anyway, we're not complaining. But, I want to just go to Jolene, when you were working with UNHCR and all the other, community projects, when somebody asked you, "Oh, Jolene, what do you do?" I said, "I'm a social worker." What kind of a reaction do you get from people? Is it, like, what kind of misconceptions, or what are the first questions they normally ask you? Because it's not a profession that you come across very often. People ask you, "Oh, I'm an engineer, I'm a doctor." Everybody knows what it means. When you say a social worker, what kind of a reaction do you get?
Oh, well, the most common reaction I would get when I say I'm a social worker, they would go, "Why don't you find a better job?" I guess a lot of people, when they say that, I understand where they're coming from, the misconception, or that they think that I'm probably not paid, because there's a lot of conception where, social workers, we are just doing good, we are volunteering, and we're not actually getting paid. So that's how a lot of people react when I say that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big stigma. Elsie, have you gotten that before?
Yeah, yes, definitely. Over the years, they think that you're only volunteering, you're not paid, yeah, you're not trained, you're just a do-gooder. That's the kind of image that it has, been over the years. Yeah. So
So I guess that's
we are
something that we
trying to
have.
change that. Yeah, we're trying to change the image of social work in this country. That it's not just about doing good; it's much more. It's
Mm-hmm.
doing good, but in a much more professional way, in a trained way. It's
So
difficult to sort of get rid of that kind of image of social work in this country.
Suddenly, you all make me feel bad. Like, that means I'm doing good, not in a professional way at all.
No,
Suddenly,
not
I feel I'm so
one
small now,
way.
so small in front of both of you. Yeah, I think that's part of the, when certain professions that are not in the regular sense, the usual, the traditional sense of what, so as they say, get a better job, get a life or something like that. People say, people lack understanding. But now I'm going to shift this to our host, who has now chosen. JP, better be ready. Now, you have chosen to study social work. Now, you come from a banking background. How many years? I'm not too sure how many years you've been in the bank. Sorry,
more than 15 years.
More than 15 years you've worked in a bank. What makes you now want to explore this pathway? Or if I may use the word, the road less traveled. I mean, it's easy to remain in the banking line and build a career, but you have chosen this. Something significant happened to you, a life-changing event? Share with us a little bit about.
So as I reflected this program, coming up with the framework, and I also reflected about my journey to this, and I think it's like what Jolyn said, right? People, when they find out that you are a social worker, they ask, "Can't you find a better job?" The other way has happened to me. It's like, are you not making enough money or making too much money that you decided that you want to leave banking altogether? The answer is no.
Have you made your millions already? Then you can retire now.
In heaven. Those millions are deposited in heaven. But I think coming out of the pandemic, at the start of it, you see that there was so much suffering within the community, and perhaps also from a faith background, having always trying to do good. I realized that in the last 1 year, in 2021, that was actually a pivotal moment. When I see that there was actually a movement for the white flags, and I see the background story, and I see that there are so many NGOs that have been set up prior to the pandemic, and they all had to shift their focus to humanitarian crisis in Malaysia, helping out people in the rural community, the Orang Asli community, the underprivileged community, the marginalized community. And I see so much of that floating around in the media. And I started to speak to people around me. And I spoke to one of our guests from before, Heidi, who actually runs Refuge for the Refugees. And as I was chatting with her, I remember one thing that she said that was very poignant. She said, "You must let your conviction be bigger than your passion." I think what she was trying to say is that, yes, you may enjoy helping people, but at some point in time, you have to ask yourself, if really this is what you want to pursue, then maybe it's time for you to peel back and basically get yourself educated. Because whatever that I understand from social work up to the point when I enrolled for this diploma was what I get from the media, right? You see people going around, their car booth open and they're distributing food bags, and you think, oh, okay, that's social work. But having taken this program, and like what Elsie and Jolyn have shared, right, that is that professionalism, the education, the understanding, the foundation that I felt I was lacking. And so I looked up Google, and then I found this program and I enrolled for it. And so basically that was that pivotal moment. I discerned. I actually did pray a lot, and I asked myself whether am I ready to go through this part-time program, because it's a lot of commitment, because the program comes with actual field placement as well. So, I mean, all roads eventually led me to signing up for this program, and that's how I ended up, trying to figure out maybe it's not too late to start a career again, and move away from banking.
Oh, that's why we see less of you on Saturday mornings on our show these days, because these two people have been occupying you. So now that we have them on the podcast and they know what they do, this is part of our social engagement. So hopefully you will give JP some time off, some slack, to be a host on our podcast from time to time. So this is the whole strategy behind of having both of you here, so that we can have more JP too at the end.
I see.
Yes.
Okay. Good strategy.
It's Father Clarence, we are petitioning for extra hours to give to Catholics at home.
Yeah, I mean, JP had done a little bit of research. Thanks to JP. JP is always well prepared. He talks a little bit about the ratio of social workers in Malaysia. JP, I think you kind of found out it's one social worker to what, 8,000?
8,500 Malaysians. That's the ratio.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, how does that work out? I mean, looking at the number of social issues that we have in our country, not just not just in urban areas, but more in semi-urban, rural areas, the challenges that people have to face, young people, children, women. What would be an ideal? Is there an ideal that we should work towards for the country? I mean, sometimes they talk about the medical profession. The ideal seems to be, I can't remember the number, one person, I mean, one doctor to how many people. Is there something that's ideal? I'm sure people who are involved, you probably will say 1-to-1, but that's that's asking for
That's impossible.
something impossible. But what would be like an ideal? I mean, if
I
there are
think
people out.
for our profession, we have looked at that. It's also difficult to have one kind of a ratio because we work in different fields of practice. You're working with children who are abused, or you're working with poverty, you're working with domestic violence. There's so many areas, so we cannot have just one kind of standard really. So it can range from very difficult kind of problems like 1 to 10 or 1 to 15, or it can range even 1 to 30, depending on the severity of problems that you're dealing with. Because social problems are just so wide. There's just so many categories, and then there are different levels of severity of problems as well. So it's very difficult to say what the one ratio can be. It cannot be. In social work, it's just difficult because you're dealing with problems from birth to death, and it's such a wide field. That's why social work has always struggled to find a definition. It's difficult to define social work because it's such a wide field. You're working with different target groups and different levels of severity of problems and all that. It's really hard. Until today, we are struggling actually, but we do have an international body called the International Federation of Social Workers that have come up with a global definition, and even that is not applicable to every country. Each country may have their own way of defining social work, so it's really a wide open field kind of a thing. Yeah.
When you say you're dealing with from issues from birth to death, that sounds like what I do on a regular day. Now maybe I should apply to be a social worker, part-time social worker in some sense. Sorry, Jolyn, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I realized that I know Miss Elsie has been mentioning a lot about like medical social workers, and we've been talking about the wide range of social workers. So maybe I will just take this opportunity to put Miss Elsie on the spot instead. Like, we know that for social work we have many different areas. Like, maybe you could share with us a little bit about the different types or different areas of social work.
Well, actually, in Malaysia, the prominent group of social workers was in medical social work, doing working with patients in hospitals. That was very prominent in just after World War II. And then there was also the social workers working in the welfare department. So they were dealing more with welfare aids, for children, for women, for elderly, for the disabled. Whereas medical was concentrating on patient care. It can be any of those medical problems that they have. In medicine, there's a wide range of medical problems, right? So social workers can also specialize in certain of those areas. Yeah. So that's what we understand when we talk about social work in that sense. It's really a wide field, and you do find social workers in the non-government sectors, right? So many of these non-government organizations, they are doing a lot of good work. They may not be doing social work per se in that professional sense, but a lot of them are actually doing a lot of what they call like welfare kind of work, right? They do a lot of support services, but they also have to have some form of ethics, some form of guidelines for them to actually engage with the people on the ground, right? You can't just go in because of you feel that you want to help. Sometimes your way of helping may be determined by your own perception of what helping means, by your own past experience, or what you learn in your growing up years. So it may be colored by certain prejudices. It may be colored by certain experiences that are unhappy, that may cloud your judgment. Just like people who have been abused may find it difficult actually to work with somebody else because they have a lot of pain themselves, and sometimes this can be transferred into a relationship that in a way complicates the relationship. So it's a very difficult area to work in when you're dealing with people's emotions, people's experiences. It's a challenging job, a really challenging job. So you really have to be very well sort of prepared to want to take on the challenges. Actually, yeah, not easy.
I'm just
Yeah,
going to
so
ask. I'm just going to ask a kind of a corresponding question to what you just said, and this is something that a lot of people ask, especially for you all. How do you, for example, you said it's emotionally draining for you also. How do you kind of like say when you go home, you said I leave this at the doorstep, and you cut off from those emotions and you go back home.
Yeah.
This is something that even I myself as a priest sometimes, the ability to say that, okay, I mean, yeah, there are lots of problems, but sometimes I need to just kind of cut myself off emotionally for my own sanity.
Yeah.
Elsie, how do you do that?
Oh yeah, that is really difficult because that's why we social workers really, in the first place, I think we need to understand, the kinds of trauma that we go through during social work, and you do need a very, I call a stable personality also to deal with this, and you need to know when to get out and sort of, in a way help yourself, get some support systems going for yourself so that you can continue working, because you can get easily burned out when you're helping people in trouble. You can get easily sort of absorbed into their lives, absorbed into their problems, and you to maintain that kind of objectivity, and to stay neutral in many situations, not easy, not easy. That's why we always believe that we should always have a mentor. We never work alone. We must always work with mentors who are able to sort of support us through. We need a lot of debriefings throughout our career. You cannot really handle social work alone. There's always, many people around who can actually support you, but they have to be trained themselves to understand what you're going through. Actually,
But how much of that mentoring, how much of mentoring does God play in this whole picture? Your faith. I mean, maybe Jolyn. I mean, just coming to you. How does your faith help you in this area?
Mhm. Well, for me, I see faith as just like a safety net, something that I know that will always be there. Okay, so when all else fails, when you are burnt out completely, to me, I just believe that there is a higher power that will, always just be there and help me through it. That's how I see things. So when I am burnt out or completely exhausted from going through clients to clients, absorbing their issues, I just like to feel that I want to tune off. There's nothing I can do at this moment, and I always tell myself that my job is to empower them. I don't want them to have a dependency on me because I will not always be there for my clients. And I just let go. How I let go? Well, there's many ways. My favorite one right now is just to watch Netflix to tune off my brain. So as long as I don't think, that will save my sanity.
I suppose Father Clarence is just like how your mentor is up there. So at any point in time when you have trouble, you can turn to your mentor, and I think things will sort itself out, right?
Yeah, I think sometimes even in my own line of ministry, sometimes you realize that certain things are beyond me, that I can only do so much, and there comes a point where I also need to trust God and say, Lord, I've done as much as I can, and now you take over. The kind of dependency. I think the dependency on God, especially for me in that sense, it's very important in the line that I do, because I alone, I mean, as much as I would like to think so, I can't change the whole world, but I can make an impact on individuals. And I can't change the whole, system, but little ways. And I think for me, that's what gives me meaning, the sense that that there is a higher power that helps, that gives me some sanity, Yeah, as much as I do Netflix too. Yeah, so don't worry. I also do. It's not all about it's not all about going to a room and praying all the time. But sometimes you just need to get your time off. A good laugh, a good comedy. Just to get your mind off work. Sometimes, yeah. I think that's the same thing to do for, especially when you're so pulled in different directions and needs are amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you talked about the system, and earlier on we also talked a little bit about how you should always have a mentor. And I think I just wanted to bring Elsie back into the conversation specifically for the social workers bill. So Elsie, I think you've mentioned it a couple of times in the last 40 minutes or so about the social workers bill and how it has actually been tabled. For the benefit of our viewers, maybe you could actually share a little bit about how this social workers bill will tie in with the professionalism of social work that you mentioned about.
Okay, yeah, definitely the bill is something that will help those practicing social workers to be professionally recognized. When you have something, a legal kind of a document, legal system set up, just like any other profession, I think we need something like that too. But it's been a real challenge for social work because over the years it's been so misunderstood, in the sense it's been in a sort of referred to as voluntary work, as charity work, as philanthropy kind of work, and so that kind of attachment is hard to shake off actually, and tell people that actually social work is a profession. But yeah, it's really a struggle over the years. To try and get people to understand that issue. And even with the government, it's taken a long time to get to the point where the ministry says, okay, we will take this up as one of those, initiatives that they want to promote and push forward. And it has been since, I think, 2005, we were talking about it, and then 2010, it actually came in a written format, the social work bill kind of a thing, but it's still like not there yet, and it's difficult for people to still understand social work in many ways because they still think of the word social as something that anybody else can do. It doesn't need competency, that it doesn't need to have specific training, special training, and all that. So it's been a struggle for the Malaysian Association of Social Workers to push this through over the years with the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development. Although we had the support of the Social Welfare Department, and we had brought in UNICEF and also came in and engaged a social work consultant from Australia to help in the drafting of the bill and promoting the bill and all that. It's still at a point where, sometimes we still get this kind of questions coming back from the Attorney General's chambers, questioning this, questioning that. So it still hasn't gone through Parliament for approval yet. But that is the struggle of social work, because I think it's still not well understood, and the Malaysian Association of Social Workers is still continuing to push it, that's how it is. The bill is hopefully the intent of the bill really is to get the government and the public to recognize social work as a profession, and to also register social workers who are trained, who are qualified, and when they register, they also have to apply for a certificate where they can actually practice, certificate of practice. So without that kind of qualification or training, you actually are not supposed to practice social work, because social work is a very, very difficult field, in the sense that you can be in a situation of misusing your authority, maybe even sort of not working ethically, with people who are in need, and so there's a lot of issue about ethics and your professional responsibilities. Yeah.
It's true because I agree with you on that, Elsie, because taking this program, I realized that we study sociology, we study psychology, we study social work, ethics, framework, and values. I think those are the things that, as a social worker or people who from the outside look at social worker think that, yeah, it's like when people got free time, they go and do this lah. This is basically social work. But now that I'm on the other side of the wall, I realize that it's actually far from the truth because there's so much knowledge building in that process. And I think for our viewers who are out there watching this program, we've got Jolyn and Elsie here. So if you do have any questions that you wanted to ask or curious about what social work is or a social worker's day-to-day job, what they do, who do they interact with, that kind of questions, what communities do they work with, please feel free to drop it in the comment section and we'll get to that by the end of this program. So, Father Clarence, do you have any questions on the social workers bill that you wanted to just get clarification about?
No, but it's interesting because it kind of touches the very fabric of society, the very core of society, and if they are not trained, I know that even in our own little in seminary when we do a bit of counseling and psychology, I realize that sometimes we ourselves carry unresolved issues, and when we are trying to do these things, we can always transfer our own issues onto somebody else if we are not careful. And that's it doesn't help people very much, and then it kind of like really makes the situation worse because there's this kind of you're loading your issues on somebody else. But yeah, in that sense, I was just thinking, like in our neighboring countries, how is it? I was just curious as I'm listening to you. Like in Malaysia, we don't have proper legislation. Neighboring countries in Asia, are there? Is there a legislation more regularized for social work?
Yeah, some countries in Asia are regulated well, like Hong Kong, Australia, even I think in India, Thailand has also come up with an act, Singapore, they have actually moved forward, but we are still stuck with this because somehow it's not being pushed through parliament yet, and but many other South Asian countries, they are well ahead already in recognizing professional social work. Philippines was one of the first actually, definitely, Singapore, Hong Kong.
So how does it work now? So I'm curious to ask, how does it work now in Malaysia, for example, because you don't have a kind of a legislation for social workers. So people like you, where do you register yourself? And now you carry the title, the social worker. So who recognizes you? Is it the association or?
Yeah, at the moment we have the Malaysian Association of Social Workers, but they are not what we call an empowering body in the sense that they only can give you membership as a social worker, right? They have different levels of membership, like a full membership or associate membership, student membership, life membership kind of thing. But they are not the authority to say, that you are a fully fledged social worker in the fullest sense of the word, So that's why they are pursuing this thing about having the act, a social work bill, to sort of professionalize the practice. And many other countries are going through that, but some countries do not do that. They go by what they call the professional body itself, depending on how the situation in the local country, like I think in our country, we do need legislation because here people seem to want to have an act in order to recognize, it's not enough that the Malaysian Association of Social Workers say that this is a profession. It's not acceptable to society in that sense, So that's why we are working with the Ministry of Women on this issue. It's been so many years, it's still not pushed through. It's been like ding dong, going to and fro with the, the Attorney General's office. Yeah.
No, as you say that, it makes me wonder now because we have a department for social welfare. It makes me wonder whether some of these people are adequately trained. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day, and I'm sure you have many views about that. But Jolyn, you as I said, you run this program. right? I'm going to highlight a little bit about this program, and I'll come and collect the advertising fees from MCKL later. What do you hope to achieve? I mean, by running this program, this diploma in social, when the legislation is so loose in this country, people like JP have signed up. I'm sure you have many other students too. What is the goal? I mean,
Well, I would say the goal of this particular diploma in social work program, when we first developed it, we were actually focusing a lot more on individuals who are already involved in either humanitarian or welfare that were not professionally trained, that they did not know about the intervention skills, the theoretical skills. So at the beginning, when we started the program, a lot of our students were from that background, right? They were working in NGOs or some organization, but they didn't have that particular knowledge. So when we talk to NGOs, a lot of time we always try to get them to get some of their staff to join our program, so that when they understand it, well, in essence, then they can go back and train their colleagues, and that will help develop the awareness of what professional social work really is. And as what we mentioned just now, we are going into around since 2017, so around the 5th year of our diploma in social work. And I'm actually really happy to see individuals like JP, who's totally from a different industry, and that just shows that the awareness of what professional social work really is about, it has already started to spread. So it is only during like JP's batch, I would say, that we have seen so much of people from other industries coming in to join us. JP, you will know in your cohort, a lot of them were not from this industry. So that is a very reassuring thing for me. So as we continue to grow, I hope to see more people from different industry, and this will help the society in essence understands the difference between doing good, volunteering, being a helper, as well as a professional social worker itself.
Yeah.
I'm sure as you speak now, I mean, for our viewers, what will be running through their mind is that, question is, what are the qualifications needed? Of course, I'm sure they can get the information from the MCKL website, but just to hear from you, what do you look for in someone who would like to, so at least now we will know a bit of JP's qualifications too, since he never talked about it. So this is a roundabout way of getting to know what is JP's qualification. I'm just kidding
Let me
anyway.
pull out his transcript.
No.
That will be the last question, Jolyn. How is he doing? So we would like to know publicly tell us how is he doing as a student. But that's the last question. But what if you want somebody who wants to pursue this path? What is required of them?
Okay. For MCKL, the entry requirement for our diploma in social work is just 3 SPM credit. However, we do recognize that there are a lot of individuals out there that may, where the older generation, they go out and work from when since they are young, they may not have that SPM qualification. So we actually do have this system in place whereby if you are working for a certain number of years, especially in industry that's related to social work, I think the minimum is 3 years. What we can do, even if the individuals does not have the SPM credit, is they can actually take a certificate called APEL. APEL is basically the equivalency for your working experiences. So if you can pass that standardized test from APEL and you get a certificate, we can actually enroll you in as a student as well. So there is that option. So that's the general, I guess, understanding or requirements of MCKL's diploma in social work. But I think as what we can see is our population in MCKL, a lot of them are working adults. So they do have that experience being in society, and that's what makes our classes very fun. And in all honesty, we don't see our students as students. We see them as someone who we learn from. We are peers, we share stories. And that really enhances the whole learning in diploma in social work in MCKL per se.
We have a comment from one of our viewers. I'm going to just, wait, hold on. Let me just, yeah. And it's very true, I think, it's from Philomena Peterson. Because she notices that, say, when you talk about career talks, it's the traditional ones. I mean, even when I came out of school, it's the traditional. It is either accounting, law, medicine, or engineering. Of course, now you have so many other things. Things that I've never even imagined or never even heard of. do you find that this is something that that we should explore or promote even more? I mean, I'm not just talking from a business point of view of of sustainability for MCKL. I'm not talking from that perspective, but in order to transform society, is this something that we should be creating awareness about?
I would
Yes.
say
Jolene?
definitely. I would say definitely yes. And you'll be amazed. Like, throughout the time I'm working as the head of department of MCKL, we were invited to several high schools, private schools, to actually just give awareness of what social work is. And the response that I get usually from those high schoolers is that they never even imagined there's such a profession as social work. They didn't even know what it is. And what more when we talk to them about what are social issues. So you can see that there are interests within the younger generation. It's just that never in any syllabus or any professional talk or even in any of the education sector that actually mentions about this. So I think it's very important to actually get them aware of this since they are young, and try to cultivate some of these values, understanding. Okay, it doesn't matter if later on you decide this is not for me. It's fine, but as long as you understand that there are issues like this and there is professions like this to actually assist with these issues, and that's what's important to me.
I think if I can
Elsie,
add
do you
to
want to add on?
Yeah, if I can add to that, I think in our country, the early emphasis has always been about political development, social development, economic development. Actually, not so much social development. So the focus was always on those areas, and people don't really give much credence to social issues. It was always about politics and economics, and and over time, I think parents just look at careers for their children that they think are what we considered, what how
Put
do you
food,
call it?
Stable,
puts
traditional,
food on
yeah.
the
Yeah,
table. Something that puts
yeah,
food on the
more
table. Yeah.
stable, money making, status giving kind of a thing, right? Like doctors and engineers and all that, right? So the focus was always on those kind of careers, and social work was like low level, it's not given that kind of prominence. But over the years, I can see that with so many social problems cropping up, there is a change in thinking now, and people are also now thinking about social development of the country. And to look at social development, you have to look at the welfare of people, and I think this is where I think gradually people are changing their thinking about this, and so social work is becoming much better recognized as a profession. But it has been a long road, a real struggle to get to even this point, because we had a diploma program in the Singapore University before. Then sort of that, when Singapore separated from Malaysia, it was like, okay, it's just taken away from us, and then we had to restart. But when we restarted, it was with degree programs, right? But now we are bringing back the diploma because we see the need for many NGO workers who did not get the opportunity actually to go into social work before, and they can't get to the degree program now because they have passed that age, and so this diploma actually was developed out of that need to train the NGO workers more than the government workers, because government they always take their social workers from degree programs. So we're still struggling. I think we're still struggling, but I think we are getting somewhere. You can see that if people like Jonathan are coming in, I'm like, yay.
Well, he's got his millions all stashed away. Don't worry. So I'm going to come after him. I'm going to come after him for some donation first. I mean,
Yeah.
we have been we're coming up to an hour of this conversation, and I think So I think, for example, there's a question from Celine here. I guess Jolene, you want to take this?
Mm-hmm.
It's right up your.
Right. There is no age requirement to join MCKL social work diploma. Our youngest is 18 years old and the oldest is 62, if I'm not mistaken.
And
So
that's JP. That's JP.
yes, everyone,
Hiyo,
JP is
father, you've
62.
revealed my age.
So there is absolutely no age requirement, and that's what makes our class very interesting also, because you get to hear from the young ones, you get to hear from the old ones like Jonathan. So we have so many experiences going on. So there's absolutely no age requirement that we are looking into.
It makes
JP,
for a very
And I
interesting.
just wanted, yeah, indeed.
JP,
I just want to say,
I'm sure your class is very exciting. Your lecturers are so joyful, witty. So it must be
it is
quite
true.
enjoyable.
My class is a really fun one, and I'm just really grateful that I've got lecturers like Jolyn as well as Elsie, because for someone like me who have decided that I want to pursue an interest down this social work role, it's so good to have people who have had that years of experience of practicing it, right, to come in to share the story. And from the other point of view is that there's my kind of story which I bring in from the corporate world, and then we share ideas, and that really helps a lot in terms of the understanding, because I'm not really good with books, Father. So all these stories, the things that we share, we discuss during our classes, that really brings it to life, what being a social worker really truly means. Yeah. So I think Father, you mentioned,
Looks like at the end of the semester you're getting 10% increase in your marks. Like you're just publicly, acknowledge your lecturer.
10%.
So don't worry.
I hope for more, Father. I hope for more than 10%.
The rest comes from coursework.
but
10% for apple polishing.
yes. But we're coming up to the end of the hour, and I'm really so happy that Jolyn and Elsie are able to join us for this program. But before we close, Father, if I can just put them on the spot, right? And I just want to just turn over to Elsie first to ask you, Elsie, what is your vision, or what is the message that you would like to share with our viewers? And then after that, I hope that Jolyn can answer the same question as well. So over to you, Elsie.
Okay, definitely. I'm all for people learning what social work is about. I think that the more they understand what professional social work is about, I think then there will be a better response to problems in this world, just in this country itself. Just that kind of awareness that people have problems, that people need help, but they also need professional kinds of intervention. And it's important for all of us to recognize that kind of issues in ourselves first, in order to be able to help somebody else. So going through this program itself, I think, is eye-opening, heart-wrenching, whatever you go through, painful or not painful, but I think it is a good learning situation for anyone. Even if you decide that at the end of it you don't want to practice social work, but I think it is really enriching, yourself, learning yourself, understanding yourself as a person. Yeah. Even if you don't want to become a social worker.
Thanks, Elsie. And how about you, Jolyn? What's your vision? What's your message to our viewers today?
Well, for me, I would say, because we're talking so much about social work and we've talked about the many different aspects about social work, my vision is I would really like to see more engagement from the society, especially from the younger generations, to really understand what social issues are about and how we can help. And I want everyone here to understand that yes, we are over here talking about professional social work, but all of us as individuals, regardless of not whether you are a social worker or not, all of us has a role to play. But do understand where your role is. If you are not a professional social worker, try not to go into intervention, because there is so many restrictions and you may cause issues to be more challenging. But as just individuals in the society, it's never wrong for us to lend an ear to someone. And I'm not saying that those that are doing volunteer work are not important. They are equally as important in our society, because we do need volunteers that get to go out. Especially, you can see during the pandemic, we needed them so much. We've seen during crises, these are the people that really helped. But understanding where your role is also a very important thing for me. So I would say that's where my hope comes from.
I'm just going to add a little bit to what the two of them have said. I think sometimes you're right. I mean, in each one of us, we can do something rather than do nothing about it. And also to be able to help people, to lead them to a place where they can get better help. If we know that you are not able to, that you think this is beyond you, let's not be Iron Man, Spider-Man, or Superman think that we are superheroes, that we can do everything. I've realized that long time ago. But sometimes it's just to be able to point people in the right direction, especially when friends come to you, and to be able to accompany them to a place where they can get the right assistance. I think that's part of also, the wider aspect of social work that we can do, and every one of us can do that. And sometimes it's our inaction that kind of makes the situation a lot more difficult, when we don't do something about it. And I think that's the Christian faith, isn't it? I mean, JP, for us, that's our faith. Our faith must be accompanied with actions, good actions. It's not just all about, kind of a ritualistic, pietistic faith, but it's something that helps us to help community. It's been great having the both of you here this morning to talk with us, and I'm sure it touches and pulls certain chords in people's hearts. And I think somebody mentioned here, social workers are definitely underrated. So people acknowledge that.
So this 15th of March is the International Social Work Day. So if you know a social worker or anyone out there, feel free to say thank you so much. And on this note, I just want to say a very big thank you to all of the social workers out there, Malaysia and beyond, for all the great works that they have actually laid down for people like me who is pursuing this as a career as well. So so we pray for them, Father. So if we can just have you to close today's session with a real short prayer for all of us.
Yeah. And before we say a prayer, thank you very much, Elsie. Thank you, Jolyn, for being part of this conversation this morning. It's been very insightful into the life of a social worker, the challenges that you face, and even the stereotyping that people have of social workers sometimes can be quite difficult for you, I'm sure. People think, and sometimes we say things that maybe people don't mean, or people don't know how to say it in the right way. Sometimes that's the challenge, like saying things like, or don't you have a better life, or don't you have I think you play a very, very important role. And like what one of our viewers said, it is underrated in many ways. We ask God to bless you and the many other social workers, whether, people who are involved in some kind of social work, especially in these times, the pandemic, the floods, we're hearing about landslides in our country. People are involved in helping others. We just want to thank God for the gift of people like this, young and old, who go out to help so many different people. Just invite our viewers and us to pray this morning for all these people. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God, our loving Father, we give you thanks and praise for this opportunity to have this conversation this morning. We thank you for the gift of people like Elsie and Jolyn and the many other people who are out there who have dedicated their lives to work, to help, to empower, to make our world better. Lord, we ask you to bless them as we celebrate World Social Work Day. We pray for all social workers that they may be inspired by your love, they may be inspired by the community, and they may be appreciated also, so that the work that they do will continue to build a better society in the way that you have intended us to be. So we placed all of them into your loving care, and we ask you to bless them today in a special way. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Elsie. Thank you, Jolyn. Thank you, Father, as always. Thank you to all of our viewers.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, thank you for joining us. We forgot to ask for
Thank you.
JP's marks. Never mind, we'll ask for JP's marks later. All right.
Oh,
Thank
time
you,
is up.
everyone.
Time is up. I need to go off now. Thank you,
See you.
everyone. Take care.
See you.
And see you
See you
next
next
time.
time.
Bye.
Thank you for
Take care.
having us. Right. Bye.